All right, John Laurinaitis. So on Thursday, this was just insane. I was at my daughter's like kindergarten orientation, and as I'm going in, my phone is buzzing, and I am getting this statement from John Laurinaitis' lawyer, and I'm like, oh God, this is the statement, and boom, it's just this was insane. It was like if you could have seen me for the next 2 hours. I mean, it was just comical. But the statement came out. This was John Laurinaitis responding through his lawyer, Edward Brennan. John Laurinaitis has filed a motion today, fully joining in and adopting Vince McMahon's motion to compel arbitration. Mr. Laurinaitis corroborates Mr. McMahon in publicly declaring that Ms. Grant's allegations of sexual abuse and coercion in her complaint are completely unfounded. My client will fight these false allegations together with Mr. McMahon in the proper forum, arbitration. Now, as everybody probably has memory of, this is a 180 from the statement that Edward Brennan had put out earlier this year, first to Vice in February, stating, quote, Mr. Laurinaitis denies the allegations in the misguided complaint and will be vigorously defending these charges in court, not the media. Like the plaintiff, Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case, not a predator. The truth will come out. And so, I mean, he's just did a full 180 here. Yeah. And this was where we were looking at, like, this was not, unforeseen, but certainly it's a grand departure from this previous statement that not only indicated that he would be cooperative with the plaintiff side, it was the fact that he was indicating that wrongdoing did occur, but positioning himself as a victim. So the question would be now, a victim of what? If nothing happened, what are you a victim of? And again, the statement that Laurinaitis' team made back in February, and also gave a similar one to myself and Brandon Thurston back in April, he's not under oath. You are allowed to lie in public or change your stance. He is not breaking the law by changing, but it does harm one's credibility when you're saying one thing and then several months later, you're saying the opposite, and you're aligning with the person that you had previously stated you were a victim of.
Is there any explanation that would make all of these statements that Laurinaitis' lawyer has released to be true? Is there any reasonable explanation where he would side with Vince McMahon in saying that Janelle Grant's allegations are unfounded, I believe is the term, while also claiming that he, like the plaintiff, is a victim in this case and not a predator?
If I was to be John Laurinaitis' defense here and have to weave my way out of this prior statement, I mean, perhaps I could be able to convince that by stating Mr. Laurinaitis is a victim in this case and argue the fact that he has been wrongfully accused. And the three key words that make that very hard is like the plaintiff. Like he is planting himself on the side of Janelle Grant, that both of us were wronged in this. And again, they are pushing for arbitration, where the idea of them having this forum that is behind closed doors, that is not in front of a jury or the media, like you could see why in front of a jury, if this were to go that far, how this would not come across very well, especially for John Laurinaitis, because you would see Grant's legal team, like they would crucify him for this contradictory statement and trying to make this seem manipulative. Sure. And it's for Laurinaitis and his side to argue why that flip, and they might not be able to do in a public venue. That's where this is being battled now, is where will this be tried in?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I don't know what the repercussions are for somebody like him if this goes like really south, Like, are there criminal... This is not a criminal case.
No.
But...
but there's acts of criminality that are outlined in this lawsuit. And again, that goes to the question of what is the status of a potential federal investigation and what is being accused here. Like Janelle Grant is accusing rape from these two in the case. I mean, that is a criminal action. Yeah. But this remains a civil case as well, though it should also be pointed out the fact that the NDA that exists John Laurinaitis is not part of that NDA. Janelle Grant had actually argued that John Laurinaitis and the others that have knowledge of this relationship should be incorporated into the NDA, and Vince McMahon did not want that to be done. So Laurinaitis is not tied to this NDA.
Yeah. So he could speak, but the question is, what reason would he have to speak when it's mainly him that, he's the guy who's actually being accused of so many of these things?
Well, it was clear based on the positioning several months ago. John Laurinaitis wanted to be dropped from this case, and I'm sure that was what they were angling for, was drop us from the case and we can be your star witness. That would be me speculating, but
okay.
Them not being able to get, like, they stated as much, that Ms. Grant should drop my client from being a defendant here. Yeah. So he is a defendant.
Yeah. I guess, I started off maybe our discussion about this particular topic, trying to understand what justifiable reason Laurinaitis might have for these conflicting statements, because I see no excuse. Of the three parties that we've been speaking about so far, Janelle Grant, Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis. Laurinaitis is the one right now to have two conflicting sides of a story. He looks to be the most sort of weaselly, I guess, if you want to use that term, of everybody, at least when it comes to his side of the story. He's giving off the impression that he's willing to change whatever is his truth, depending on what suits him the best. And that probably was the case, anyway. But this felt like a really sloppy handling of what his story and what his strategy was going to be, at least, public facing, heading into whatever they were discussing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that, in a lot of these cases, the people they are very careful of what they put out in the public. And in hindsight, Edward Brennan's statement back in February, it should have been a lot less. You would think, if you don't have all your ducks in a row and you don't know what you're angling for, privately, you can play that game if you are trying to get out of being a defendant, potentially. But to do that publicly, well, now that's going to affect you, because now you are aligning with, the person that you had stated you were a victim of. Yeah. In terms of WWE, they have until June 1st to respond to the case. And I guess, I'm certain they are probably looking at extending what they have tried to convey on television. We are not part of this, that we should be dropped as defendants. This is a problem that is contained to these two. And I think they would be happy to be distanced from Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis. At the same side, I'm sure that Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis, attempting, whatever the next game plan is, discrediting Janelle Grant, trying to discredit this case, I'm sure WWE would love that to be the result, that this case is just thrown out and this is proven to be unfounded, or because that's a lot easier than stating, yeah, all these problems did exist in our walls, it did happen, and we are now trying to divorce ourselves from two bad apples in the case of Laurinaitis and McMahon.
But it seems like in either case, the first step is to try to get this into arbitration.
Yes.
Right. And can you see the WWE trying to argue for that as well?
I think that arbitration will be probably where the defendants want this to go. As we talked about with Vince McMahon, he is the one that you would argue, if he is out for reputational rehabilitation, is arbitration the best means to go about it? You can understand why, certain defendants would not want all of this to be aired publicly, but I mean, the worst has been put out there. It is public, and
that we know of.
That we know of. You're right. I mean, there could be worse, but it's pretty bleak, to say the least, just from what is outlined in the suit. And if you are going to this length to exonerate yourself, I would think you want that in the most public of forums.
Yeah. So read into that what you will. But I guess I know enough about maybe his game plan, and the game plan typically is get it out of the spotlight, and we'll just sprinkle it with money, and hopefully it goes away eventually.